Hello, everyone. This is going to be a much more somber and slowed down video today. I don't know. It doesn't look like anyone's signed on anyway, so this may be one of those situations where I go live and, there's no one else sees it until later. But I have gotten a lot of questions, a lot of concern, especially from people who care about me, who have read the article in the newspaper that says, suspected trespass by Tony Wallace, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to give the whole story of what happened, because some of you saw on my wall that I had explained that some very, very gross, disgusting, horrible things happened while I was in the jail in a situation which I believe I never should have been in the first place. At the same time, I understand that each person in that chain believed that they were doing their job, that what they were doing was the right thing to do for the position based on what they had been told about me. So this is also a story about the dangers of gossip, because here encapsulated in the story of what happened to me and the abuse I suffered on the inside as a man of innocence who had never done anything to harm another person and did his best to show respect throughout the situation in what he was capable of during that time with the amount of trauma that was being inflicted. Understand this is difficult. This is difficult to speak. It's difficult to get in front of a camera. And there is a significance to this change in my voice. If you listen, you can hear, especially if you go back and compare the other videos, there's an absolute difference in how I'm speaking, and that does have a significance. Rather than leave it a mystery, I'll tell you, well, I can't tell all of the significance because it's too much and it wouldn't make sense. But for now, I'll focus on the part that is relevant to this story, i.e. that the trauma that was inflicted on Tony was so intense that essentially the ego of his persona that had built up everything you know about him, everything you know about this man, including all he was becoming that you have seen through these videos, was shattered and broken down basically into that of a completely innocent child that is wounded and needs time to recover. And through that trauma, I emerged. And although Tony is still here, he's still driving the ship for all intents and purposes. That emotional part of him is hidden well deep within his core. Now, Tony had been telling people for a while that he had multiple personalities. He kept being told that wasn't possible because he didn't experience enough trauma in his life. Once you hear this full story, I'm sure no one would question the amount of trauma that Tony has experience in a very short time, not including the abuses that he has suffered over the last few years in various relationships in various ways, shapes, and forms, because he is that kind of very loving, very open-hearted people pleaser who will throw himself into all sorts of pain in order to let other people know that he's there for them, to his own destruction sometimes. Now, you might say who I am is still an aspect of Tony, with that wounded inner child sort of receded and in recovery. And I have stepped forward to not control everything, but mainly to work with this. And that is, part of the partnership that he and I have within this body. You could say I've always been here, but if you want to put a label on what I am that part, that masculine father figure, the parental part of him, the one that has raised his children and been in charge of all the comings and goings, monetary, all that kind of stuff. That part of his life is what I represent. And for now, it has to remain that way. If I were to give that part of Tony back control, the emotional damage would be so much that he would just instantly burst into tears right in front of you. And he's not ready for that. He's not ready to show that side of himself to the world. So I know that all sounds strange, probably scary. Most of you probably don't know or think you know a multiple personality, but here's the thing to consider. All of us, all the time, are multiple personalities or multiplexal personas. And we all wear different masks depending on where we go. We are afraid of people's masks because we don't know what's really behind them, but the fact is we're all wearing them. Whether you speak to a friend, a stranger, a workmate, parents, children, someone else's children, every one of those situations has a different mask you put on and a different energy you project. And if you really go into your heart and remember, you go like, oh, that's true. That's what I do. I put on those masks. And each of those masks is actually a living thing, a persona. It's all frequency. It's all connected. And I am that frequency that has stepped forward to be the protector, to kind of hold up the core of Tony while the rest of it is recovering. So with that explained, hopefully, it'll give you an idea and not be afraid and not think that I'm just, making up these accents. Just a few days ago, Tony couldn't even do an Irish accent to save his life. And there are plenty of people who will attest to that who were at the party last weekend, that every time he attempted it, it was absolute disaster. So it couldn't have happened. But now all of a sudden, coming out of the hole, coming out of that state of abuse, here it is, perfectly formed, possibly a little bit dodgy, but it's exactly who I am. There is no acting to put on. Couldn't have been done a few days ago. Only could it be done through the abuse unleashing that part of me and hiding that other part. So just going to take a moment before I get into the whole story to just kind of look and see if anyone's asked any questions so far, see who's there. Hello, Ivory, darling. Thank you for coming. Been a fan of yours for a very long time, love. All right, I think everyone's just kind of paying attention. So I'll get back to the story. Now, understand that the Daily Courier released a story. I haven't read it yet. I haven't even had time. Mostly I've just been physically recovering. There's still a lot of nerve damage in my hands. I can't really hold any kind of art and crafts. I mean, I can pick them up, but like the fine muscle needs are not there. Everything kind of goes between like having, you can kind of see my hands, goes between either numbness or like the nerves are burnt on fire because of how tightly they shackled me, and they did that on purpose. Again, this is difficult to discuss, but I feel it's very important that I get through the whole thing because I am a man of integrity and I want the whole story to be out there. And my goal is not to attack anyone. My goal is not to cause anyone to lose their livelihoods, though I do feel a lot of these people who are in there need to be deprogrammed. They need to really do some soul searching and look at how they behave and what they listen to when someone comes in, because there are a lot of people in there. There are a lot of people in there that had done a lot of things. And then there are a lot of people that had just ended up with a label. And once they had the label, they kept getting sucked into it over and over again. And every time they did, they got deeper and deeper into debt and had less and less ways of getting out of it because of the labels that have been attached to them. So on this particular morning, all right. So a lot of you know that, or have wondered, or maybe my appearance makes it obvious, that Tony is a very special person. And what that is, what I would call that, is kind of a triumvirate of things that all add up together to make the way he perceives the world different than most other people. And he's only now gotten to the point where he can express that in ways that are verbal, that other people can understand, because he's been exposed to some really very high intellectual, very high, what we call sapiosentient, clairsentient, that kind of thing. Let me explain what that means. So sentient being, in this case, meaning mental capacity, like the processor of the mind. And it goes hand in hand with the idea of matrixing and pattern recognition. Now, in order for the patterns to make the most sense, you have to have the most data. So Tony is also able to bring in a lot of data that other people don't recognize and then synthesize it through this kind of clairsentient processor. Yeah, nerve damage. I'm getting that. So on some occasions, the energy that he gets from various sources will kind of congeal into a ball of electromagnetic energy in his chest. Now, to say that may sound completely paranormal, out of the ordinary, but for Tony, this is a constant. He always feels this ball of energy right here. But when this comes in, he often will feel a pull. And that pull can be so strong, so intense, that yes, I could sit there and not go. I could exercise my free will and not follow it. But what happens is the stress from not following that thread can build up into a seizure. So your choices are go and follow the thread, or be, a gibbering mass of uselessness on the ground, feeling like you're being electrically shocked. In fact, it's almost as if someone's hitting a shock button to get me to go. So I don't really have much of an option when it happens. And this is one of the most intense pull that I've ever experienced. Happened on the morning of Tuesday, the whatever date that was. My time has almost no meaning for me anymore after this. Right. And if you please go back and watch the whole story after this is done. Don't just get part of it. Make sure that you have the full, complete story. So this pull was very intense, and it wasn't a frightening pull. It was actually how to explain. I don't have the words. I don't have vocabulary to explain how things feel in this state. But it is it's a literal, like, magnetized force that's within you on a cellular level that is pulling at your bones, right? So if you can imagine what that feels like, that's what happens. Only there's also other data being fed into the mind to help provide context to that. So I went out on a walk, and I was doing my kind of performance thing along the way. Not like crazy, just kind of like going through motions of my own. Like, if I was leading a parade, what would I do? Just practicing. And at some point, I got close to my grandmother's house. My grandmother, who recently passed, and I sensed this sense that something was wrong on the inside, like maybe someone was inside the house. So I went around and just went and just tried the knob and left, and that was what triggered the entire event, was me turning that knob. Because what I found out later is that there's a neighbor across the street who's been reporting my cousin for coming up and trying to get into that house for over a decade, I think. And my cousin is a known amphetamine user, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when he called the police, he said there was this meth head that was trying to break into houses. And that's what started it, was that label. So the idea of a meth head out there that was breaking into houses already started the police off on a paranoid journey, right? So once I tried that door and found that it was locked, no problem, I kind of shrugged my shoulders and said, okay, well, I still feel it. It was getting more intense. And, I found myself drawn out to a street called Allen Creek, and I went up in that direction. I just followed the signs, and I followed the pull, which was getting stronger and stronger, and that sense of distress, like someone was being held inside of a house. And I finally got to this one house, this 2380, which is the one that they put. And here's the thing, I didn't even remember, like, because they beat the ever-loving fuck out of me. My memory was completely shattered. I had holes in it, and it's only now that's all the pieces are coming back together. So I didn't know until I saw on the documentation that I was suspected of having trespassed. But I got to that house, and the intent, it was so intense, I could hear someone inside being held back and screaming to let them get the door open. And so I ran back, even though I was pulling myself away from it. Ran back, pulled straight to the door, opened it up, and there was a bathroom and no one there. But there was another door that went outside, so I opened that one. No one there. So I looked around the yard, looked back, was like, oh, shit, there's someone in the house. Oh, God, what am I going to do? Kind of tried to play it nonchalant, not knowing what to do at this point. and then, quickly made my exit, closed things behind me, and went on my walk. At that point, the man who had called me in at first pulled up in a black car and started following me. And I was really creeped out by this, because I had felt that distress, and I was like, what is this? Someone who's a kidnapper, and I was waving at him to show that I could see him and that I knew that he was following me and that, to go fuck off. Next thing I knew, police were there, and they said someone had called and said they were going into the house, and I already was just charged with this electromagnetic energy. And as soon as the stress and the fear of being accused of something bad and being hurt or being taken away or being treated as if I was crazy for this was so intense, I began to feel the precursors of seizure. Now, understand that I call it multiplexal seizures because there's many, many, many layers to it. The medical industry very stupidly calls it pseudo seizures. They call it pseudo seizures because it doesn't fit the strict definition of what a petit mal or grand mal seizure are. Now, I've had petit mal seizures too. I've had full on, I lost complete control, and that was witnessed. But usually you have this series of layers that you go through, starting with, vertigo and nausea, which is what I was feeling. And I was trying to tell him I was just getting sick. I had to throw up. And, I was saying, and, trying to fight this off. I'm just saying, I'm having a seizure. I'm having a seizure. And obviously from his standpoint, he just thought I was faking it. And I collapsed on the ground. They did call an ambulance. And I thought I was going to get some help. But, I laid there on the ground, and the guy just sat and mocked me, made fun of me. Exactly how you would imagine. And then at some point said, well, you're resisting arrest, so I'm going to take you in, put the cuffs on me. Someone else said, hey, did anyone read your rights? I was like, I don't know, just trying to fight the seizure. And he started reading me rights. I don't know if he finished. I got hauled into the ambulance, and everything just started getting scrambled, like all these different personas coming out of the fear because of the seizure that was happening. When they got to the hospital or wherever it was that they pulled me over, they got out. 3 men were there, 3 uniformed men. I think they were police, but the memory is so scrambled now it's hard to remember. They asked me to lift up my shirt and spin around, which I did immediately. And as soon as I was all the way around, my hands were up like this, they bum rushed me into a chair, and they started threatening to rape me. They started saying all sorts of horrible things like, oh, you like to touch little boys? Well, I won't even go any further because that's as far as I can go without breaking through that wall that's keeping me holding up right now. That went on for a while. That went on for several minutes as I struggled in the chair, fighting just to not have someone stick their penis into my ass. Screaming that I didn't want it, that I did not want this. And that's when other personas started to come out of me and say, no, can't you see he doesn't want this? He doesn't want it. He doesn't want it. Just leave him alone. Stop doing this. This is horrible. And it was 3 grown men twisting my arms and legs, touching me, insisting that they were going to put themselves inside of me. And I don't know what happened. I can't remember. But I know I said something. Some word came out of my mouth, and then they stopped and slowed down. And shackled to a rolling chair, they put me in a tiny room, like a concrete closet. I don't know exactly what happened, but that was when, well, not me, someone else came out. I could tell you who it was, but I'll let him explain that when he's ready to come forward. But that went on for a good 45 minutes where, if you can imagine I certainly hope that there's footage of this, because what happened for what seemed like 45 minutes, I don't know the exact time because time had no meaning at this point. I began to very slowly go through the history of the world and and my own history as Tony and rap about all the things that people misunderstood me about. I've never rapped in my life. I couldn't do it on command if you asked me, but I took the word itself and wrapped it around my little finger as if I was a complete master of it. Where's that guy? I'd like to find him again. Hopefully I don't need any kind of trauma to bring that part of me out, because I know it's there now. But then what happened next, I thought that I was going to be let go, that whatever had transpired was over, but they rolled me into another place. They took me out. They slammed me against a wall without warning, told me I was resisting arrest again, tased me, spun me around, slammed me into other things. As I screamed and screamed to be left alone and not to do this. And I just thought I was going to be tortured and raped at some point. I just thought that was just my life from then on. And that went on for, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. That it just felt like forever. It could have been 20 minutes. It could have been 30 seconds. I don't know. I don't know how I got to the next part, but three very large, I say large this way, not so much this way, very large men shoved me into a bathroom with the door open. The entire staff of the facility were there just doing their paperwork in the background, minding their own business. And they didn't tell me why. They just said, take off your clothes. And of course, the last time I had complied with that, I had 3 men try to rape me for a very long time. Luckily, I had enough training to just keep that from happening. I don't know if they actually intended to, or they just intended to break me down. I know someone said there was a mistake, so maybe someone had told them that I was something that I wasn't. Maybe that's how they treat people that they've been told have hurt children. You believe that? So anyway, these 3 large men in the bathroom, they tell me, take off my clothes. And I say, no, I'm not doing that. They say, you're going to fucking do it. We're going to make you do it. And I said, no, please don't do that. Well, actually, the guy in the back, I was like, what are you going to do? Watch? That was probably a bad idea. But that's where I was, because I knew that this is just going to be another rape. And it was. They threw me down, jumped on top of me, one on each limb. And then I don't know which one, couldn't tell you, but one was reaching down my pants and trying to pull my pants off and doing things with my arse again. And that went on for a very long time, and I fought, but that didn't matter. I was face down on the ground with 3 very large, probably 250-pounders easy on top of me, just cranking on my joints. It's a miracle that they didn't break at least one of them. And at some point, they just give up and they tell me just to calm down, and it took a while, but I did. I just relaxed. I just gave in, knowing what was going to come next. And they finally just got me up, but they shackled me 4 ways. With my hands like this, and threw me in, I don't know what they call it, but it was basically solitary confinement, because no one would listen to you or address you or acknowledge that you existed, no matter what you said or screamed. And all I wanted was to ask someone for my phone call or to get medical attention for my hands, which were swollen up to about here by now. My mental state was so scrambled that I didn't know who I was, where I was. I mean, I knew I was named Tony and all that. But I thought this was going to be my life now. There was going to be nothing else. Just who knows when it was going to stop? Who knows when the next rape attempt was going to be? And who knows if complying or not complying would trigger it? And I won't tell the rest of the story. It basically went on like that for the entire time. I was not given access to any kind of legal counsel. I was constantly told when I tried to show people my wounds that I just needed to lay down and sleep off the meth. Later on, I will tell you that someone falsified a report from the hospital saying that I was tested for meth. I have evidence that is not true. There's no way I could have been tested, and moreover, I was not on fucking meth. I don't do meth. I've never done meth. I don't know what it's like to be on meth. The only thing I know about meth is from watching fucking Breaking Bad, right? But yeah, I mean, even when the judge finally released me, You know, I mean, they were like, oh, well, you're probably going to be here a while. And other people would say like, oh, well, you know, it might take a couple days or, you know, another 15 hours to get the paperwork done so you can get out of here. I didn't even know at that point if my family had heard that I was living or dead. I had no clue. I didn't know what day it was. I didn't know what time it was. I was just stuck in a hole and turned into an animal over and over. Medical staff, even when they finally had someone from medical staff get there, and I showed her my injuries, she said, well, maybe in an hour I can get an ice pack. She came back 4 hours later with an ice pack and felt like she had done me a great, great favor by doing so. So that's what happened. And all because that I'm honest. I'm an honest person. I'm a man of integrity. Like, I will put myself out there and tell you the deepest, darkest secrets of my soul so that other people can understand who I am. I understand this disorder that I have, which is actually an incredible gift. And there are people in this very chat who know that about me and who will tell you about me. Now, again, I'm not looking to make any money. I'm not looking to start anything. I'm not looking to take away anyone's jobs, even though I think some of those people are not in the right industry. I do see the connection. And what happened is, like, at each stage of the game, each handoff, the snowball effect of what people were saying about me got bigger and bigger until I was more and more dangerous to them. And they saw me as less and less of a human being and more of a monster. But that's the God's honest truth of what happened. And I don't care who sees this, and I don't care if they submit it to evidence, because I want it submitted to evidence. And I want every camera, every angle, everything subpoenaed. And I'm going to take that, and I'm going to go to any national chain that will listen, that will take this story. Why? Because this is something I know about myself now. I'm resilient. I'm a very strong person. And in each of these situations, I did not attack a person, even in the face of being threatened with rape by multiple people at the same time. I know I'm going to come back from this. I know I'm strong. But I would be a coward if I receded into the distance on this and let someone else end up in the same position. So anyone who wants to help me bring this case to the forefront, who knows how often this is happening? Who knows? This is just, to me, it just seemed like that's how it works. This is what we do. We beat the shit out of people, hand them off until they don't know what they're saying or doing. And what does that do? Well, the moment you say something wrong in this system, your credibility is shot and nothing else will be listened to. Done. You say something, you say one thing out of step, and your credibility is done. So of course, they abuse you in a way that your credibility cannot, and everyone watched it. Everyone watched it. That's the hardest part. Everyone watched it happen and just acted as if it was completely normal. Why? Because the first person who reported me said I was a meth head. That's how scared people are of meth heads. They're willing to rape them multiple times, abuse them until they have no sense of who they are, no sense of time and space, put them in a state where they think they're just going to be raped over and over again at someone's leisure for the rest of their existence, with no way to get through their family, no way for their family to get through back. No. Now I know what my real enemy is. It's the system. The way we do things. There are better ways. It didn't matter if I was black or white or red. Although I will say that most of the people down there that were in my circumstances were red-skinned. I mean, both Native and Hispanic. So there's definitely some profiling going on. And I have that kind of face that could be mistaken for that, and I've been mistaken for all sorts of different ethnicities, so probably made it easy, right? But what happens if we don't take a stand? What happens if we don't come together and say, like, no, we need to do this differently, because all they're doing is creating more broken people who then become dangerous. That's the reason why drug use is associated with violence, not because the people on drugs, most of the time, not because the people on drugs are dangerous, but because they're then broken into the system and turned into violent people. Now I know that firsthand. If I was any other person than who I am, I wouldn't be coming back from this. No. I would still be sitting in the corner, hunched over, rocking back and forth, covering my ears. So, anyway, that's the whole story. Well, it's not every single detail, because I don't want to get into every single detail of what they did. But if you have any questions, or if you question who I am because of some fucking stupid Daily Courier entry, my best fucking friend had a Daily Courier front page article about him back in the 90s, when he had two absolutely sloshing drunk guys bust down his door, and the weapon he just happened to have on hand was a katana, and he used it, and they survived. But yeah, they did get injured. What did the newspaper tell him? What did the Courier say about him? That he lured them up into his lair so that he could attack them. Why? Because that probably sounds a lot more interesting. I don't trust newspapers at all, or news stories at all, because I've met so many people I love who I know the full story, who just had their livelihoods destroyed because some news outlet wanted to craft a narrative. So think about that next time you hear the news say anything about anyone. Doesn't matter, alternative, paper, print, television, radio. Anytime you're hearing gossip about someone, think for a second about how the telephone game works, and how it works in a system that is paid to magnify the villainhood or the victimhood or the heroism of every individual in order to craft a story. It's okay, Christy, I can do this. I've got this. So, again, anyone who wants to know who I am, all you got to do is talk to me. I'm right here. Never been a dangerous person. In fact, everyone who really knows me knows that I will go way out of my way to avoid conflict. Way out of my way. I'm the kind of person that will bake you a fucking cake if I think I got a conflict with you, or buy you a beer. And I've always taught nonviolence. So I don't care what anyone else says about me, because I know who I am, even if they don't. And I'm not a violent person. And with that, I will say good night.